Hi there, I'm MacKenzie Newbry, and I am currently enrolled in ITL 604 as a Master's of Arts in Education student. And here is my personal identity story. So, I was raised in Southern California, South Orange County to be exact. I had a really comfortable upbringing. I was raised in a small family of four people. My parents are still together today and have been for 32 years, and I have one younger sister. My family has played a huge role in who I am and my value system and where I stand with a lot of my perspectives and point of views, worldviews. Um, because I came from a dual parent household where marriage was something that was really important, I gained that as a value as well. I was used to being in a home where I had my mom and my dad, and I could depend on them equally for everything. And I'll talk a little bit later in my personal story about how that required me to sort of make some shifts as I got older and became a classroom teacher and met students who their families didn't quite have the same value system as mine did. So I grew up, spent my first 20 years down in Southern California, and I had always, from a very young age, had an adventurous spirit. When I was 12 and 13 years old, I was going to Mexico on mission trips, doing philanthropic work, humanitarian work, working with people down there, and that had always been a passion of mine. I love traveling and exploring, and so as I saw more parts of the world as I grew up in my late teens and early 20s exploring, I realized, wow, this world is so much bigger than the bubble that I grew up in, and there's so much the world has to offer to me and my education, my development, that I haven't gained from living in the same place for my entire life. So when I was 20, I decided to transfer to Northern California to live on my own and go to college up there and experience the independent life. So I moved to Sacramento, which is actually one of the most diverse cities in California. It may actually be the most diverse. And coming from Southern California, specifically South Orange County, that was very different from what I was used to. And so my perspective on a lot of things started to shift a little bit. So I started in this relatively small conservative family in a relatively conservative area of our state. And then with traveling, my mind and my points of view started opening up as I started seeing other places in the world. And then I moved to Sacramento as a young adult on my own. And then my worldviews were really challenged because sitting in the classrooms that I was in at Sacramento State, there were people of all different cultures and backgrounds and ethnicities in my classrooms. And I felt like I had so much to gain from the people who were around me because many of them I had never been around someone before who shared the beliefs and the worldviews that some of these people had. And so I have always been very curious and interested in culture, and I think that that does stem from that sort of adventure spirit in me of going out and exploring and meeting people around the world. So going to college, during a time in my life that my development was so fragile as a young adult who's on their own for the first time. I really took it as an opportunity to challenge, to be challenged, to have my perspectives and my worldviews that I had grown up with, that I had assumed were, the ultimate right, understanding that that's maybe not the case, that there's something right about everyone, and you have to take the time to ask the questions and be curious to develop and become a better human. So finished school, finished my credential program in 2013, and I got a job at a school site in Fairfield, California, which is just about 45 minutes outside of Sacramento. And the school that I was in was an extremely high risk school. A lot of our students were from single parent households. 60% of our students were from non English speaking families. And pretty much the entire school was either on free or reduced lunch. We had several parents who were incarcerated. We had several kids who didn't know who maybe their father was or who their mother was. Um, and I was extremely challenged in that situation, in that uh, job position. I was there for 3 years, but I feel like I learned more in those 3 years than I have ever learned in my entire life because I saw the way that people learn to survive and they learn how to cope and they learn how to get through the days no matter what is facing them. And I can't say that I personally have went through some of the challenges that these kids went through growing up, but learning to be empathetic and understand that I don't have to live in their shoes to recognize the value that they bring to the table and the value that they bring to me and my education. And so that experience was huge for me, and it really developed me as a person and as an educator. And so fast forward a few years, I decided to move to Southern California to be closer again to my family. Remember, rewind, my family is super important to me, so I couldn't stay away for too long, and I moved out to teach in Temecula Unified in Riverside County. And I am now at a school that is completely different than where I came from. I've taught there for 4 years, and our school has a totally different set of challenges that have kind of developed and shaped my identity as an educator. So, Temecula is a highly rigorous school district. Everything we do is very much about being the best and being the most, like, all the new trends. We like to try all the new things. And so when inquiry based learning and teaching came about, our district jumped on board, and we were one of the first ones to really in the area sort of focus on that. And um, so it's interesting coming from the school that I came from before and now where I'm at currently. I wouldn't say that my job now is easier. I would just say that it's different. I came into the school that I'm in with a great understanding of the needs of students who lived in poverty, a great understanding of the needs who lived with parents who weren't able to support them because they couldn't speak the language that the kids' homework was in. And even though the parents wanted so badly to be invested in the children's education, they couldn't help them because of that language barrier. And now being in a district where, many of the families have one parent who stays home at all times, language is not a barrier for the majority of the families that I work with now. There are a great portion of my students every year in third grade who have both parents at home. They're from dual parent households. And yet there's still needs. I've noticed that where I'm at now, there's a lot more needs on social emotional development. Um, there's needs with teaching kids to be like rigorous critical thinkers and to take responsibility and be independent learners. They have had so much support throughout their life so far that they haven't had to learn to be independent yet. And so a lot of times that's incorporated into my teaching with them is how can I teach them to be independent and to be intrinsically motivated so that they're not doing what they're doing for a grade or for a reward, but because it's the right thing to do. So, all of my experience, my family growing up, my experiences with traveling, going to college in Northern California, and being around such a diverse community of people working in a Title I school and then transitioning to a school that's not a Title I school and has a different set of needs. All of these experiences I feel like have really helped me become well-rounded. My personal identity story, I feel like it's ever changing, of course, and in 10 years I could do an assignment similar to this and my answers could be completely different. But I do feel like I've been gifted a wide range of experiences to help me have a worldview that um, I think I can be proud of. So that's my personal identity story. I hope you enjoyed it.